The year is 2024. Kenya, known for its vibrant culture, faces unrest. The streets are now scenes of protest. The controversial finance bill of 2024 proposed tax hikes have ignited fury, especially among the youth. Gen Z, digitally connected, demands change. Armed with smartphones, they take to the streets. Their chants echo through urban canyons. President Kenyatta faces an unprecedented challenge. He reaches out, promising dialogue. Amidst political tension, a lone figure arrives at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Agent Tony Spears, a seasoned operative, is here to investigate mysterious deaths. Bodies have been surfacing from the Yala River, each death shrouded in ambiguity.
Spears blends into the crowd, his movements precise and calculated. He hails a ride-sharing service to the 680 hotel, favored by diplomats.
As the car navigates Nairobi, Spears notices something peculiar. 3 vehicles maintain a consistent distance, mirroring his movements. A cold shiver runs down his spine. He's being followed. President Kenyatta's attempts to placate the youth are met with mixed reactions. Some view his overtures as genuine, others remain skeptical. The protests continue, albeit with less intensity. The tension remains palpable. Young people, their faces a mixture of anger and hope, line up to confront their president. Kenyatta listens intently, taking notes, nodding in understanding. He promises to address their concerns, to find solutions that work for all Kenyans. Agent Spears sends a coded message to Agent Josie Jackson, outlining his suspicions and requesting backup. He prepares to leave his hotel room, his senses on high alert.
As he steps out, a group of men grab him, silencing his struggles. He is bundled into a black SUV and whisked away.
Hours later, alarm bells ring at headquarters when Spears fails to check in. Agent Josie Jackson is dispatched to Nairobi to find Spears.
Jackson arrives in Nairobi, a city on edge. She checks into the 680 hotel, requesting the room next to Spears.
Nairobi, a city of contrasts, pulsates with frenetic energy. Gleaming skyscrapers pierce the sky, casting long shadows over sprawling slums. The air hums with the cacophony of urban life.
For me, freshly arrived from Geneva, Nairobi is a sensory overload. I navigate the city with practiced ease. My movements are swift, purposeful, my eyes constantly scanning.
The 680 hotel, with its air of discreet luxury, feels like a world away from the raw energy of the streets outside. The glow of the laptop screen illuminates Jackson's face, highlighting the determined set of her jaw. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, seeking any trace of Spears' movements.
Firewalls crumble before my expertise. I am a digital ghost, moving unseen through cyberspace.
Hours melt away as Jackson loses herself in the hunt. Finally, a breakthrough. A faint signal from Kilifi, Kenya. Spears could be injured or worse. I have to get to Kilifi, and I have to get there fast. The early morning air is cool and crisp as Jackson exits the 680 hotel. She hails a taxi to Wilson Airport, a small, discreet airfield. At the airport, a twin-engine Cessna awaits. The pilot, a grizzled veteran, greets her with urgency. Jackson boards the plane, her senses on high alert. The flight north is a blur of green and blue. The signal is now strong, guiding her to a nondescript cluster of buildings. The Cessna touches down, kicking up a cloud of red dust. Jackson thanks the pilot and steps out into the stifling heat. She flags down a battered Peugeot taxi and directs the driver. The abandoned building looms, its windows boarded up and walls crumbling. Jackson pays the driver and approaches cautiously, hand near her holster. The signal is deafening. Jackson's pulse quickens. A broken window offers a tempting entry point. Jackson carefully enters, glass crunching under her boots. The signal leads her deeper towards a heavy metal door. Jackson approaches the metal door cautiously, her hand hovering over the butt of her pistol. The signal is strongest here, emanating from just beyond this barrier. She takes a deep breath, steels herself for what she might find, and kicks the door open. The hinges scream in protest, shattering the oppressive silence. The room is small and sparsely furnished, illuminated only by a single bare bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. In the center of the room, tied to a rusted metal pole, sits Agent Tony Spears. His face is haggard, his clothes torn and dusty, but his eyes, when they meet Jackson's, flash with a mixture of relief and defiance.
Josie, about bloody time you showed up.
Relief washes over Jackson, momentarily erasing the fatigue and tension of the past few days. Spears is alive. He is weak, but he is alive. She rushes to his side, her fingers working deftly to untie the ropes that bind his wrists.
Easy there, Jackson. No time for a tea party. We've got company.
He nods towards a battered radio receiver sitting on a rickety table in the corner of the room.
They've been listening in on our conversation.
Jackson's eyes narrow. Of course, they walked into a trap, but who were they? And what did they want with Spears? The air in the abandoned building crackled with tension. The setting sun, visible through the grimy windows, cast long, distorted shadows across the dusty floor. Agent Josie Jackson, her movement swift and precise, checked her weapon, her expression grim. Across the room, Agent Tony Spears, his wrists still sore from the ropes that had bound him, stretched his stiff muscles, his gaze fixed on Jackson.
We can't stay here. They know this place. They'll be back.
Agreed, but we need a plan. We're outgunned, outmaneuvered, and operating blind.
Not entirely. They made a mistake. They underestimated us. We used that to our advantage.
A plan began to form, a dangerous gamble born of desperation and fueled by a burning desire for payback. They would turn the tables on their captors, lure them into a trap of their own making. It was a long shot, a risky maneuver, but it was their only chance. Section 2. Enter the OCS, a ghost from Kenya's elite squad. The flickering light of a kerosene lamp illuminated the cramped, sparsely furnished room. Rain lashed against the corrugated iron roof, a steady drumming that echoed the tension in the air. Agent Josie Jackson sat opposite a man who exuded an aura of quiet strength and authority. Retired OCS Joash Kipkorir Tenai, a legend whispered in hushed tones within the Kenyan police force, was a man who knew the shadows, who understood the language of violence.
So, you need to find ghosts. Jackson laid out their predicament, sparing no detail. She spoke of the abduction, the shadowy figures, the abandoned building in Kilifi, and the chilling discovery of a sophisticated surveillance operation. As she spoke, she watched Tanai carefully, gauging his reaction. His face remained impassive, a mask carved from granite, but she sensed a keen intelligence behind his steady gaze. When she finished, Tanai leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled thoughtfully beneath his chin. Kamalisa, they are the whispers in the night, the unseen hand that eliminates problems.
Section 3. Kamalisa unveiling the shadowy network. The name hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Kamalisa, Swahili for to finish or to neutralize. A chillingly apt name for an organization that operated in the shadows, their methods brutal, their reach seemingly limitless. Jackson listened intently as Tanai, drawing on his vast network of contacts, painstakingly pieced together what little he knew about the group. Kamalisa, he explained, was not a formal organization, not in the traditional sense. It was a loose network of individuals, former military and intelligence operatives, corrupt officials, ruthless mercenaries, bound by loyalty, greed, and a shared willingness to do whatever it took to maintain their grip on power.
They were the enforcers, the problem solvers, the ones who operated beyond the reach of the law, answerable only to those who paid their hefty fees.
Their motives for targeting Agent Spears remained unclear. Were they acting on their own initiative, or were they merely pawns in a much larger game, their strings being pulled by someone even more powerful, someone who wanted Spears silenced? The questions swirled in Jackson's mind, each answer leading to a new, even more disturbing possibility. Section 4. Laying the trap, a game of cat and mouse. Under Tene's guidance, a plan began to take shape. They would use themselves as bait, lure Camalisa into a trap of their own making. It was a dangerous game, a delicate dance on the edge of a knife, but it was their only chance to turn the tables, to gain the upper hand. Tenai, his old skills honed to a razor's edge, orchestrated the operation with the precision of a seasoned conductor. He identified a location, a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of Kilifi, and set about transforming it into a kill zone. Surveillance cameras were discreetly installed, their feeds monitored from a makeshift command center. Tripwires, pressure plates, and other nasty surprises were strategically placed, each one a potential game-changer.
Meanwhile, Jackson and Spears, playing the roles of the hunted, allowed themselves to be seen, their movements carefully calculated to draw their pursuers into the open.
They knew that Camalisa would be watching, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The tension was palpable, a living, breathing entity that permeated every aspect of their existence. Section 5. Whispers in the night, awaiting the prey. As darkness descended, casting long, eerie shadows across the dusty floor of the warehouse, a tense silence settled over the makeshift command center.
Jackson and Spears, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of a laptop screen, watched as Tenai's men took up their positions, melting into the shadows like phantoms.
Outside, the only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the distant rumble of thunder. A storm was brewing, the air heavy with anticipation.
Jackson could feel her heart pounding in her chest, a steady drumbeat that mirrored the tension coiling in her gut.
They were ready. They had laid their trap. Now, they could only wait for their prey to make its move. The hours crawled by, each tick of the clock an agonizing reminder of the stakes. Just when Jackson's nerves were stretched to the breaking point, a whispered message crackled over the comms.
Movement detected. 2 vehicles approaching from the north.
This was it, the moment of truth. Section 1. Whispers in the night, the calm before the storm. The air within the warehouse was thick with anticipation. Every creak of the old building seemed amplified in the silence. Agent Jackson, her gaze glued to the monitors, felt the tension. They had laid their trap, and now they waited. On the monitors, vehicles drew closer.
Jackson's pulse quickened as she recognized the SUVs.
The trap had been baited, and Camalisa had taken the bait. "Hold your positions!" Tenai's voice crackled over the comms. "No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We take them alive if possible. If not..." He trailed off. Jackson tightened her grip on her weapon. The warehouse was now charged with anticipation, the calm before the storm, and Jackson knew the storm was about to break. Section 2. A breach in security. The trap is sprung. The silence, pregnant with anticipation, was shattered by the screech of tires and the shattering of glass. On the monitors, Jackson watched as Camalisa operatives, dressed in black tactical gear, their faces hidden behind balaclavas, swarmed the warehouse, their movements swift and practiced.
They were tipped off, Spears hissed, his voice a mixture of anger and frustration. "We have a leak."
"No time for that now," Jackson snapped back, her eyes glued to the monitors as she tracked the movements of the intruders. "We need to adapt."
She could hear the sounds of gunfire erupting throughout the warehouse. Single, precise shots followed by the staccato bursts of automatic weapons fire. The trap had been sprung, but it was no longer clear who was the hunter and who was the hunted. Tenai barked orders into his headset, his voice calm amidst the chaos, redirecting his men, adapting to the rapidly changing situation.
"Jackson Spears with me," he commanded, grabbing his weapon and moving towards a door hidden behind a stack of crates. "Time to even the odds."
The warehouse had become a labyrinth of shadows and gunfire, the air thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder.
Jackson moved through the chaos with deadly grace, her weapon an extension of her will.
She exchanged fire with a shadowy figure, the muzzle flashes illuminating the dust-filled air. The man went down, his cries lost amidst the violence.
Jackson didn't hesitate. There would be time for reflection later.
Beside her, Spears fought with a cold, controlled fury, his years of experience coming to the fore. The tide of the battle began to turn. Tenai's men, their superior numbers and knowledge of the terrain giving them a decisive edge, slowly pushed back Kamalisa's forces, herding them into a shrinking pocket of resistance. The gunfire, once deafening, began to slacken, punctuated by the groans of the wounded and the desperate pleas for mercy.
Jackson, her senses on high alert, rounded a corner and came face to face with a lone Kamalisa operative, his back pressed against a wall, his weapon trained on her. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as their eyes met, and in that split second, Jackson recognized the man beneath the balaclava. Her blood ran cold. "You?" she breathed, her voice a mixture of shock and disbelief.
The man hesitated, his eyes widening in recognition, and in that moment of hesitation, Jackson struck. Her movements were a blur as she disarmed him, her weapon pressed against his throat. He struggled, but Jackson held him fast, her anger fueling her strength.
"Who are you working for?" she demanded, her voice low and dangerous. "Who betrayed us?"
The warehouse, engulfed in flames, cast an eerie orange glow against the night sky. Smoke billowed into the air, carrying the acrid scent of burning wood and gunpowder. Jackson emerged from the inferno, her captive in tow, followed by Spears and Tenai's men. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. Jackson noticed a figure on a nearby ridge, silhouetted against the burning warehouse. The figure watched them, a chilling smile on his lips, before melting into the darkness.
"We're not done yet," Spears said, his voice grim.
Jackson nodded, her grip tightening on her weapon.
Dawn broke over the Kenyan savannah, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, a stark contrast to the charred remnants of the warehouse that lay smouldering in the distance. The air, heavy with the scent of ash and the lingering tang of gunpowder, crackled with a palpable tension. The battle was over, leaving behind a trail of destruction and unanswered questions.
The ambush at the warehouse had been a carefully orchestrated trap, a desperate attempt to silence us, to bury the truth beneath a pile of rubble. But who had betrayed us, and why?
Retired OCS Joash Kipkorir Tenai, his weathered face etched with a mixture of exhaustion and grim satisfaction, joined her at the edge of the devastation.
They fought like cornered animals, desperate but determined.
They knew we were coming. Someone tipped them off, someone close.
The betrayal cut deep, a wound that festered with suspicion and doubt.
We'll find out who, and when we do...
He trailed off, his silence speaking volumes. The investigation into the ambush led Jackson and Tenai deep into the heart of Kenya's intelligence community, a labyrinthine world of shadowy figures, whispered rumors, and shifting alliances. Tenai, his reputation as a legend within the Kenyan police force preceding him, navigated this treacherous terrain with a practiced ease, his network of contacts stretching far and wide.
Kamalisa is just a symptom, a tool used by those in power to maintain their grip, to silence dissent, to eliminate threats.
He paused, his gaze fixed on a faded photograph hanging on the wall. A group of young men, their faces determined, clad in the distinctive black berets of the Recce Squad, Kenya's elite special forces unit.
They recruit from the best and the brightest, men and women who have dedicated their lives to serving their country. But loyalty, like everything else, can be bought.
Jackson listened intently, absorbing every word, every nuance of Tenai's explanation. She was beginning to understand the depths of the conspiracy they were facing, the intricate web of connections that stretched from the highest echelons of power to the darkest corners of the criminal underworld. The interrogation room was sparsely furnished, its walls bare except for a large whiteboard covered in a chaotic jumble of notes, photographs, and interconnected lines. Agent Josie Jackson, her brow furrowed in concentration, studied the board, her eyes darting from one piece of evidence to the next, searching for the missing link, the connection that would unravel the tangled threads of the conspiracy.
We're dealing with multiple players here, each with their own agenda, their own secrets to protect.
Greed, power, revenge, the usual suspects.
But who benefits the most from silencing Spears? Who has the most to lose?
That is the question we need to answer.
He picked up a photograph from the table. A grainy image of a man in a tailored suit, his face obscured by shadows, his eyes glinting with an unsettling intensity.
And this may be the key to unlocking the truth.
Section 4. A high-stakes gamble, preparing for the unexpected. The clock was ticking, each passing moment ratcheting up the tension.
All right, let's do this. Weapon, ammo, comms, tools, everything in place.
Agent Josie Jackson, her movements honed by years of training, moved through the familiar routine. She was preparing for a high-stakes gamble, a dangerous game of cat and mouse.
Another dead end, but maybe this one lead could be something.
Across the city, retired OCS Joash Kipkorir Tenai, his network of informants buzzing with whispers and rumors. He was a master of his craft, a seasoned hunter stalking his prey.
Come on, there's gotta be a pattern here.
And in a secure location known only to a select few, Agent Tony Spears, his body still bearing the marks of his captivity, analyzed surveillance footage. He was the strategist, the chess player, plotting his next move. They were a team, bound together by circumstance and a shared determination to uncover the truth. But as the shadows lengthened and the stakes grew higher, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Section 1. Whispers on the wind, following a ghostly trail. The air in the safe house was thick with tension.
This map, it's like a maze. Nairobi is a puzzle I'm still trying to figure out.
Agent Josie Jackson studied the map, her fingers tracing the lines of a city she was only beginning to understand.
This is where the trail goes cold. Our informant disappeared 2 nights ago.
Retired OCS Joash Kipkorir Tenai leaned over her shoulder, tapping a point on the map. Section 2. The Lion's Den, infiltrating enemy territory. The Lion's Den, a notorious nightclub nestled in the heart of Nairobi's red light district, pulsed with a frenetic energy that was both exhilarating and unnerving.
All right, stay calm, stay focused, blend in.
Music throbbed through the air, a relentless beat that vibrated in Jackson's chest as she navigated the crowded dance floor, her senses on high alert. The air was thick with the scent of perfume, sweat, and something else, something darker and more dangerous that sent a shiver down her spine. She was in deep operating undercover, disguised as a high roller, a woman of means looking for a good time. Her cover identity, meticulously crafted by Tenai's team, fit her like a second skin. But beneath the designer dress and the carefully applied makeup, Jackson was a coiled spring, every muscle tense, every sense attuned to the slightest hint of danger. Her target, a man known only as the Jackal, was a high-ranking member of Kamalisa, rumoured to have been involved in countless acts of violence and intimidation. He was a ghost, a whisper in the shadows, his true identity a closely guarded secret.
Tonight's the night. I'm going to find you, Jackal.
But tonight, Jackson was determined to flush him out, to look into the eyes of the enemy and see what secrets they held. The alleyway was a narrow chasm of darkness, the stench of garbage and urine heavy in the air, the silence broken only by the distant wail of a siren.
You have something that belongs to me.
Jackson, her back pressed against a wall, her hand hovering near the holstered weapon at her hip, watched as the Jackal approached, his movements slow and deliberate, his eyes glinting with a predatory hunger.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He was taller than she had expected, his frame lean and wiry, his face hidden in the shadows cast by the brim of his hat.
Don't play coy with me.
She had played this game before, knew the dance of deception, the delicate balance between aggression and appeasement.
You're out of your depth. Walk away now, and I'll forget we ever met. Stay, and things will get messy.
The Jackal chuckled, a low, humorless sound that sent a chill down her spine. The scent of his cologne, expensive and musky, filled the air between them.
You're not with Kamalisa, are you? Jackson asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes searching his face, looking for a tell, a flicker of recognition.
The jackal hesitated, his gaze narrowing slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his features before he masked it with a carefully cultivated indifference. "Kamalisa is a tool," he said finally, his voice low and dangerous, his eyes boring into hers. "A blunt instrument wielded by those who think they are above the law. I serve a different master."
Who? Jackson pressed, her instincts screaming at her to trust her gut, to run, to disappear back into the shadows. But something in his voice, a hint of truth beneath the layers of deception, held her captive.
The jackal took a step closer, his face now inches from hers, his gaze unwavering. "The enemy of my enemy," he said, his voice barely audible above the pounding of her heart, "is my friend." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver data chip, offering it to her. "This will lead you to the truth. But be warned, Agent Jackson, the truth is a dangerous thing to possess."
The safe house, bathed in the eerie glow of multiple screens, hummed with a nervous energy. Agent Josie Jackson worked feverishly, bypassing layers of encryption, peeling back the digital defenses. Each line of code deciphered brought her closer to the truth, deeper into a labyrinth of conspiracy.
Beside her, Agent Tony Spears watched the screen intently, knowing what they were about to uncover would shake the foundations of Kenya's government.
As the final layer of encryption crumbled, revealing the contents of the data chip, a collective gasp filled the room. The data chip was a Pandora's box, unleashing a torrent of secrets that threatened to engulf everyone in its wake. Names that had once been whispered in hushed tones in the corridors of power were now laid bare, their reputations tarnished, their legacies forever stained by the revelations contained within the digital trove. Politicians, judges, businessmen, and even members of the intelligence community all were implicated in a vast web of deceit and manipulation that stretched back decades. At the center of it all was a name that sent a chill down Jackson's spine. Charles Kabila, the charismatic and ambitious Minister of Finance. Kabila, a rising star in Kenyan politics, had cultivated an image as a reformer, a champion of the people. But behind the carefully crafted facade lurked a cunning and ruthless operator, a man who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. The data chip revealed that Kabila had been using his position to enrich himself and his cronies, siphoning off public funds through a complex network of shell companies and offshore accounts. He had rigged government contracts, accepted bribes, and even orchestrated the assassination of rivals who threatened his climb to the top. And Agent Tony Spears, with his investigation into the mysterious deaths linked to the Yala River, had stumbled upon something that Kabila couldn't allow to see the light of day. The safe house felt more like a cage, the weight of their discovery settling upon them.
Agent Josie Jackson stared at the burning document, the flames consuming the evidence of Kabila's crimes.
"This changes everything," Agent Tony Spears said, his eyes reflecting the flames.
Retired OCS Joash Kipkorit and I nodded in agreement.
As the flames died down, Jackson felt a surge of resolve.